Alright, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, my name is Omojesu Alfred, and I'm seeing the Swag King. I'm the boss of all bosses. I happens to be among the most innocent guys on the face of planet Ella Julius Caesar. I tell people, I came, I saw, and of course, I conquered, because the street refused to go to church. I made up my mind that I would definitely going to take the church to the street. Not only that, we may rep Christ with a whole lot of swag. Is yet another edition of the Epignosis. Yes, Epignosis with Apostle Tony right there with us on set. But before we go to the details of today's class, I would like to go on a very short break, so go nowhere. I'll be right back shortly. Now, welcome back from the break. It's in Epignosis with Apostle Tony Ikalama. Apostle, sir, how is everything?
Thank you, Omojesu. The Lord bless you.
Oh, I Lord bless you too. Now, today we are actually looking at the story of Job. In a nutshell, can you please take us through the story before we start answering our question?
Yes, I will talk about the man Job, and the book of Job starts from chapter 1 to chapter 42. So it's a long book.
Yeah.
So when you want to look at the life of Job in a nutshell, we're looking at the rise and fall and rise of Job.
Okay.
You know, people talk about rise and fall.
Yeah.
No, but when you come to God, there's nothing like rise and fall.
Okay.
If you rise and fall and there's no rising again, that means you are not among the righteous, you are not among the children of God.
Okay.
So 7 times shall the righteous fall, 7 times shall he rise again. So when there's a fall, there's supposed to be a rise. So Job was already on the rise, and there was a fall, and there was a rise again.
Okay.
So now Job, according to the Bible, Job chapter 1, it says Job was a man from Uz, from the land of Uz, a devoted man of God who feared God, right, upright and perfect, and eschewed evil. That is the person of Job we are seeing in a mirror.
Okay.
That's the mirror definition for Job. And in the course of this, he was the richest man from the East. And as the richest man from the East, he feared God. But if we look at the Bible, break down the story of Job into 3 biblical epilogues. The first epilogue was where the Job's of friends were looking at his condition as a result of punishment from God.
Okay, that was when he fall.
Yes. They were looking at it as a result of punishment from God. That is a sinner, he has sinned, and that's why God is punishing him. You know, whatever happens to a believer, to a Christian, once it is not testimony, once it's that you're downtrodden, people tend to interpret that you've fallen from grace or you sin against God. Now, that is a traditional mentality. So they were trying to judge Job from a traditional reasoning, traditional point of view. So in the first epilogue, that was the judgment. They were saying, oh, you are a sinner. You know, why would all this thing happen to you? You lost your wealth, you lost your children, you lost everything that belongs to you. Now, while this second was the area where Job was trying to justify himself before God. God, you know I'm doing this. God, you know I'm upright. God, stand up for my defense. And in the third epilogue was where God did not listen to Job's questions. Okay, so I said that the life and story or history of Job from chapter 1 to chapter 42 is broken down into 3 biblical dialogues. The first dialogue, which happens to be the friends of Job trying to give a traditional reason from the traditional point of view, that is what he's going through is as a result of God punishing him, that he has sinned before God. While the second dialogue was Job's questions and faith in God, trying to justify himself and say, God, I've been upright, I've been perfect, I've been doing this. Why am I going through this? I'm not supposed to go through all this. The second dialogue. And the third dialogue was when God answers. Now, God did not answer Job's question, but he answered to his faith. Okay. So believers should learn that God does not answer our multiple questions when we go through troubles, but he answers to the faith you have. Okay. And the faith is sort of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay. So it is the faith you have in him he answers to, not to the multiple questions you asked him. So this is a nutshell of a summary I just want to give about Job.
Okay, now let's look at the story of Job from the part of positive confession. Now we know that present right now in our life, okay, as a Christians, we always have this positive conversion. They will always tell us that as a Christian, it's not good for you to use negative words. Okay, it's not good for you to look at the negative side of life. Always confess the good confession to your own self. Okay, now, don't you think the reason why Job was tempted to that point that he lost everything was the fact that he always offer sacrifice to God each time his children went out, and once they come back, he offer sacrifice to God every day on their behalf, saying, in case my children might have done anything wrong, please, oh, forgive them, oh, forgive the household, oh, forgive my this and forgive my that. And when the temptation strike the first day, Job said something, said, that which I've greatly feared has come upon me. Don't you think it's because he has always been afraid of failing, afraid of falling out from the grace of God? That was why the temptation happened.
Now, if we look at the book of Deuteronomy 28, verse 1 to 14, there are blessings when you obey the laws and commandments of God.
Yeah.
But from 15 down are curses. Okay. So for him to be afraid of the curses is not wrong.
Okay.
But he's doing the right thing to avoid the curses. So Job was doing the right thing to avoid those curses. So offering those things daily on behalf of himself and his children. By that time, Christ has not come to die, where you say the blood of Christ. Use animal you give for atonement, to atone for your sins. So that was what Job was doing, to atone for himself. I said, peradventure, either by omission or by commission, my children have erred against you, or have blasphemed against you. He gives one animal for it, which is the atonement, which was the blood that was shed on the tree of Calvary, which Christ. So now he does this every time. Now, because he do not want himself or his children to fall to that curse. So normally, yes, you know the commandment. You know that the commandment is not grievous, it's good. But not keeping it, not adhering to it as a penalty. So one to be afraid of a penalty was not a bad thing.
Okay.
Yes. But now, he did not deserve it, because he didn't fall out of grace.
Okay.
Remember, he said, when the sons of God were gathering together, and this devil came, and God asked him, "What are you here?" He said, "I've been moving to and fro." That is talking about Job 1, 11, 12. I've been moving to and fro, seeking for whom to devour. And God said, "Have you not seen my servant Job?" So also there, if Job was not perfect, if Job was not upright, God will not be boastfully to recommend him.
Okay.
That he said to the disciples, "This is my beloved son, hear him." He was boldly. So we also as believers and Christians should be able for God to have confidence and be boastful of us and to recommend us to the devil.
Okay.
For temptation.
Okay.
You understand? No, so we don't go to that state. That God was able to recommend him. And Satan said to God, this man you are talking about, this man that you have already blessed, this man that you've already built an edge round about him, this man that you have blessed the works of his hands, does he fear you for nothing? Somebody you have been. But Satan forgot that Job grew from one stage to another. As he grew, God was still blessing him. Because he said to Abraham, "In blessing I shall bless you." So, and God said unto him, verse 12, he said, "Okay, no problem. Put forth your hand in everything he has. But upon him, don't." Just like the Bible said, "For you bear the mark of Christ upon you, let no man trouble you." So he put that mark upon him. He said, "Don't, for him, don't." Satan was able to touch everything he has, but was not able to touch him. Apart from the sicknesses and he was not able to touch his soul. Because the mark, he has a limit, like the seal of the blood on the lintel of the doorpost. The angel of death has a limit not to penetrate. So, and Job saw this. But normally, when we go through troubles, we don't know that God is protecting us. We just feel that all is lost. As a believer, you give up. Because we are looking at the story of Job so that we can relate it to our own life as believers. So when we go through troubles, we look at the troubles, but we don't look at the salvation behind the troubles. If Job had gone also, there would be no testimony. But God was keeping him for this purpose. And the devil went through, and despite that, the Bible said, Job came down. Job chapter 1, verse 21 and 22. He said, when they told him, "This is lost," your houses is lost, your sheep is lost. The Sabians took this, the Chaldeans took this. He said, and a strong wind came. Don't that weaken him when they say a strong wind came. And when your children, they are eating in their elder brother's house, and it fell on the wall, and everything collapsed, and they are all dead. He just came down, wore sackcloth, put ash on his head, and he said, he started worshiping God. He never cursed God. Verse 21 and 22. He never cursed God. The Bible says, and he worshipped God. We are looking at a believer. If you say you are a believer, in good times thank him, in bad times thank him, worship him. Job gave us a good example of what to do for a believer when his time is rough. He knelt down and worshipped him, and he said, Father, naked do I come, and naked do I go. You have given, you have taken. And the Bible said, in this Job sinned not. But we are a modern day believer. We start crying, God, why me? God, I sowed this seed yesterday. I saw the seed Job was sowing. Can any of us sow it? They say he was the richest man from the east. So, what seed are you sowing that you sow more than Job, the richest man from the east? You understand?
Okay.
So, then we start counting. Oh, we join in building the church. We build the house of God. God, why this? No, he said, this is sin not. In Job 3:25, as I said, the thing I greatly fear has come upon me. And that which I was afraid of has come upon me. Yes, he was afraid for these things. He didn't want this scenario. So as a believer, there might be some scenarios we don't want. But when it comes, does not mean that God is not with us. We say, I will neither forsake you nor leave you. So he's always by you. He's always by your side. He said, even when the devil comes like a storm, like a flood, I'll raise a standard against the devil. In the fire, is with you. In the storm, in the water, in the flood, is with you. He's always there. So when we come through problem, let's mimic Job. If we cannot act like Job, then let's mimic him. You understand? Because in all this, he stood firm. He never gave up his faith. His faith was what was talking for him. Not even the question, because even the questions he was asking, he was not so pressing on the question. He was only answering his friends, but open unto God. And God saw him through at last. And the Bible said the latter end of Job was far better than the beginning.
Okay, now, of course, I understand you. All right, I understand when the facts you talked about. He was trying to prevent the fear, okay, that were coming, or that was actually on the way coming, and he tried to put measures in place. But the Bible also let us to understand that as a man thinketh, so is he. Okay, now you attract what you think. You attract the things that you ponder on day and night. Now, I was looking at the fact that maybe Job has pondered on that incident long ago. He's trying to prevent it. His mind is there, and everything about him is there. As a Christians, okay, does not mean you become one of the richest man, or you become the richest in your environment, or you will become the richest in your community. The Bible talks about Jesus Christ find favor before men, okay, and before God. Now, you must find favor before these two people, okay, but a believer can be in a place, okay, and fast and pray every day, believing God every day, but running a business with an unbeliever, with the same kind of business, in the same environment, but the unbeliever is doing well. And sometimes the Christian mind has not attained the fact that, you see, at this level, okay, let me start thinking as a millionaire. Let me start thinking as a billionaire. Because why? If you cannot see it, like what he says to Abraham, he said, look, as far as your eye can see, I've given it to you. Now, if we carry that scenario back to, we want to relate it to what happens to Job. And he said, that which I greatly fear, meaning his mind has been on that thing. His mind has been pondering on that thing. So I'm saying that, don't you think that was the major reason why that challenge? Because now, let's look at the challenges for instance. Okay, now we cannot say that, do you mean God just keep going around and telling? Do you mean God just keep telling the Satan, have you seen this my son tempt him? Have you seen this one tempt him? Have you seen that one tempt him? Because sometimes we go, maybe God just do those things. Okay, but the Bible lets us understand that it's not that way. Okay, now other people also say God gives and God takes. But God really gives and God really takes. Okay, so let's start. These like three questions in one. So let's start from give us more. Tell us more about the cause of this Job incident. Now, also let us know, is it real that God actually said, or is it God goes about and saying to Christians presently right now? Okay, now we're bringing it to present states right now. Did God actually always say, "Oh, have you tempted this?" Or "No, you've not tempted." Have you tempted this? Or "You've not tempted. You have to tempt." Now, the last one is, did God really give and really takes?
Okay. Now, I like this question you just asked. If God really gives and really takes. Now the Bible said, unto God shall all flesh returns.
Yeah.
So, whatever the formation or format of death, it's not Satan that stands before judgment, it's God.
Yeah.
Because all flesh must give account of their stewardship while on earth. And you know, what God do not permit cannot just happen. Now, God never goes about to say, Satan, have you seen this person? Have you seen this my child? No, the Bible said, when the sons of God were gathering, and they were gathering for a meeting, for you know, when you gather, even in church, we gather, we expect the presence of God to come.
Yeah.
So the presence of God came because they were gathering for him.
Okay.
And he saw Satan. They were not able, they were not able to recognize Satan. But he recognized Satan, just like in the church. You understand? You have all sorts of kind of people, but some are devil incarnate, some are agents. Understand? And he asked, what are you doing here? Because you are not supposed to be here. And he said, I've finished my work upon planet Earth. So you are just wasting your time. I'm done. I've won all the converts. So there's nobody again for me to devour.
Okay.
So it was like a challenge unto God.
Right.
That you said, all these souls, all the flesh I created, you've taken over. And God said, no, that cannot be. I still know that there is someone that offers me sacrifices, that fear me. You know, like when Elijah said, I am the only one left among the prophets of God. And God said, no.
You're joking.
I have 7,000 that have not bowed on their knees to bow.
Okay.
Understand now? So it was like a challenge. The scenario of Job was a challenge.
Okay.
And God said, no, I have. Okay. Now to mention but few. Have you seen Job? So it's not that God goes about.
Okay.
So God was confidently. That's what I asked. How many of us as believers can God stay in heaven and confidently point at you?
Okay.
Check, even at pointing at Job, Job never disappointed God.
Yeah.
Christ came and said, this is my beloved son, hear him. He never disappointed God. So this way he pointed, never disappoint him. So now, if we are believers, we also are not supposed to disappoint him because we are undergoing challenges or troubles or trials. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
That peradventure maybe he pointed you. So why will you give up on the way?
Okay.
You understand? I know that when you talk about what Job was afraid, yes, you are right. By faith, we are supposed to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Not to bring peradventure this thing happened. No.
Okay.
Yes, that was the case of Job.
Yeah.
Because as a man thinketh his heart, so easy.
So
already this fear has been.
Yeah.
This fear has been. So he also created a vacuum for the fear.
Okay.
So because if you as a believer, and also when we look at it, at the time of Job, Christ has not come.
Yes.
You understand? So then they talk about hope.
Yeah.
They talk about having hope in God and having mercy.
Okay.
That's what they talk about in the Old Testament.
Okay.
At the era of his. Go look at Abraham, he was having hope and he sacrificed his son. But when Christ came, hope and mercy was overtaken by faith and grace.
Yeah, faith and grace.
Was overtaken. So he never had that faith, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher. So he was looking at defense at his own cycle. Because he was a wealthy man. He has soldiers, he has all those things. So the fear which he has already embroidered in his heart also created that vacuum.
Okay.
But at the worst scenario, what we should be looking at the conclusion was, he never failed. He still depend on God.
Okay.
And God restored him back.
Okay.
But let's take away, as you said, let's take away fear while dealing with God and replace it with faith.
Faith. Okay. All right. Okay. Now the last one, which of course I want you to look at for us is God giveth, okay, and God taketh. All right. A lot of Christians seems to use that to console themselves when things are not going well. Okay. Now for them to confess a positive confession, you end up saying, who am I? God has given, God has taken. Okay, now as a Christian, do we have the ability, the power to rewrite our story? Okay, do we have the ability to rewrite our story? Job, as long as I'm concerned, do not rewrite his story. He left everything in the hands of God, but he did not insult God in the midst of the trouble. And maybe that's why his own situation lasted that long. Or maybe that's why a lot of things keep going on in his life. Now, when this thing happened, the first thing that came out from his mouth is, that which I greatly fear has come upon me. Bring it back to the Christians of today. We today, when a situation, when negative things happens around us, do we just leave them in the hands of God, just the way Job did? Or do we have the ability to change that story if it's not okay with us?
Now, yes, thank you very much. If we have the ability to change the story, if it's not okay with us, or leave it in the hands of God the way Job actually did.
Yeah.
Remember that there's one thing when we look at the scenario of Job. We saw consistency in praying.
Yeah.
We saw persistency in praying.
Yeah.
But the Bible said he put on sackcloth and wore ashes. And whenever they come, he's on the ground praying. He never stopped praying.
Yeah.
So, which means in the course of his trouble, there was determination and focus also onto the God he depended on and he believes on.
Okay.
So, for a modern day believer, when you go through troubles, as I said, the life of Job is a good example. You don't stop praying. It was even then Job started praying more.
Yeah.
Before all this scenario news came, he was seated. But when the news came, he sat on the ground and was praying. So that is the more time we pray more. And that is the more time we seek the face of God more. And that is the more time we should be careful with our utterances.
Okay.
So that utterances will not be against God. Just like he was also giving offering to God. Say, peradventure, my children has uttered. So which means he's a master of how utterance should be.
Yeah.
So Job was very careful not to utter any word that will offend God at the same time. So as believers, when we said God has given, God has taken. Yes, it's really a consolation word. To be very careful not to hurt or offend God. So it's not a bad word. Yes, because we are giving the glory back to him. God, if you did not allow this, it will not happen. So because it happened, which means you allowed it. So who am I to question your authority? Who am I to question you, God? So you've given, you've taken. And the Bible said the latter end of Job was far better than the beginning. He had children back. He had wealth back. He had, and the Bible said the latter end was so gracious and glamorous than the beginning.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that's what we're actually going to call it a wrap for today. I hope you learned something. I hope you benefited something from this episode today, the story of Job. Okay, but before we before we call it a wrap, we close the curtain. All right, I think Apostle is definitely going to give us the detail of how we can get in touch with him one-on-one, and of course how we can take advantage of him. When I mean advantage of worshiping with him. Thank you, sir.
Yes, we're a Touch from God Ministries, number 7 Minichinda Street, Elimbu, in the heart of Port Harcourt. Our days of services are Tuesdays are fasting and prayers, 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and our counseling starts from 12 noon to 4 p.m. on same day. And every Friday is an evening with the Lord, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., with an exception with our night vigil is every second Friday of every month and every last Friday of every month from 10 p.m. to about 4 a.m. And it's tagged a night with God, an extraordinary night where you come and you never go back the same by meeting God at the point of contact of your needs. And every Sundays are gracious services. Our first service is 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and the second is 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Come, for God is still changing lives. The Lord bless you as you do so.
I come, for the Lord is in blessing life. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call it a wrap for today. Much thanks to everyone that make this production a wish success. Of course, I won't forget the family and friends of Swag TV International. I want to say thank you to every everybody. And of course, I want to say thank you to you that stayed glued to your TV set. Without us, there will be no you, and of course, without you, who will not be here. Now, next week we're going to be looking at the content of our prayer, the content of our prayer as a Christian. The content, because I strongly believe that through the story of Job, I strongly believe that most times our life rotates around the content of our prayer. So we're definitely going to be looking at that next week. We're going to be looking at the content of our prayer as a Christian. What how should your prayer content, how should it look like? What kind of word, what kind of confession you need to make as a Christian when you're praying? So we're going to be looking at the content in our prayer as a Christian. So that will be next week. So we look forward to seeing you next week. For today, I will say bye. God bless you.